on the news, fire rages on Onitsha chemical market, many feared trapped. ASUU accuses federal government of attempts to turn lecturers to casual workers over incomplete salary. And court orders remand of EFCC chairman over contempt. Many thanks for joining us on the newsroom. I am Abisola Adebayo. We begin the news in Anambra State, where multi-million naira worth of goods and buildings have been destroyed in a fire that gutted the chemical market in Onitsha Head Bridge of the state, with many people said to be trapped in the fire. According to reports, the fire started at about 12 p.m. on Tuesday, when the chemicals stored in some shops started exploding one after the other. Many people were also said to be injured as the chemicals were exploding and eating people at various points in the market. Meanwhile, men of the Anambra and Delta State Fire Services are currently on ground battling to put off the fire. There might be another crisis brewing between the Academic Staff Union of Universities ASUU and the federal government, as the union has faulted the government over half salary paid to its members for October 2022. The lecturers had accused the federal government of paying them half of 1 month's salary for the month of October. The federal government has since justified its action, explaining that the lecturers were paid on pro rata basis based on the number of days they worked in the stated month. Responding to the situation, Emmanuel Osodeke, ASUU president, said its members are not casual workers and should not be treated as such. Osodeke described the action of the government as an aberration and a contravention of their rules of engagement. He maintained that paying academics on pro rata basis like casual workers is unprecedented in the history of university-oriented labor relations, and thereafter condemned the attempt, which he described as reducing Nigerian scholars to casual workers in its entirety. Meanwhile, the Federal Capital Territory High Court has convicted Abdulrasheed Bawa, the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC), for contempt of court in relation to his agency's failure to comply with an earlier order of the court. In a ruling on Tuesday, Justice Chizoba Oji held that the chairman of the Anti-Graft Agency is in contempt of the order of the court made on November 21, 2018, directing the commission to return to an applicant his Range Rover and the sum of 40 million naira. She also ordered that Bawa should be committed to prison at Kuje Correctional Center in Abuja for his disobedience and continued disobedience of the said order until he purges himself of the contempt. Justice Oji further directed the Inspector General of Police, Usman Baba, to ensure that the order of this court is executed forthwith. The National Emergency Management Agency, Nema, has raised an alarm that there might be another devastating flooding in Nigeria next year if necessary precautions are not taken by government at all levels. The Director General of Nema, Mustafa Mohammed, gave the warning when he appeared before the Senate Committee on Special Duties to defend his agency's 2023 budget. He lamented that early warnings given to the states in 2022 by Nema were ignored, hence the devastating effects all over the affected areas. There are details in this next report. According to the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, the flooding disaster that is currently ravaging the country has affected over 2.5 million people and killed over 600 persons. To find a solution to the devastating situation, members of the Senate Committee on Special Duties decided to use this opportunity of budget defense to engage the Director General of NEMA, Mustafa Mohammed, on how the agency is managing the disaster.
I'm sure you have tried your best, and within that your best, we want to know what reliefs you have done from one country, from one section of the country to the other. I also want to find out, is there in any way presidential intervention specifically for attending to the issue of flood?
A little thing will happen in a community, they will leave local government, they will leave state government, they will rush to NEMA. What is actually going on?
Responding to the questions, the NEMA boss lamented the lackadaisical attitude of the states to earlier warnings about the disaster.
I have written to all the 36 state governors, and I have copies to show you 4 times. When NIMET released seasonal climate prediction and NISA released their flood outlook, we warned them in time. After we organized stakeholders meeting to analyze those reports. And part of what is in the letter is they should have local emergency management committee. Mr. Chairman, it's sad to note that only 4 states have local emergency management committee.
Mohammed further lamented that his agency is overwhelmed due to the lack of state emergency management agencies to immediately mitigate the impact of disasters in the state.
Everything that comes up in any state, the first responder everybody calls up to Nema. We are overstretched. All these people, I'm seeing them for the first time maybe in over a week because they are all deployed to different states.
Speaking further at the interaction session, members of the committee decried poor budgetary allocation to Nema and promised to come up with a legislation that would put the agency under the presidency for optimum performance.
This Nema should not be under any ministry. It should be directly under the presidency. Automatically, maybe the National Assembly must have to look for something to do in form of a legislation to bring you directly under the presidency. Because this is an emergency situation that you can spend any amount from our budget. Now, those people have been displaced now. How do you resettle them?
Nigeria is currently experiencing the worst flooding it has seen in the last 10 years, and although the government says it is doing everything it can to mitigate the impact on citizens, there are concerns on how the situation might affect the country's economy as the Yuletide season approaches. Abisola Adebayo, TV360 News.
Anyways, back to the story of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, and the federal government, where the federal government paid lecturers on a pro rata basis in the month of October. To discuss this further, I'm now being joined on the news by legal practitioner Malaki Ugumadu. Thank you so much for joining us on the news. Let me start by asking, how would you react to this situation? Because the federal government is insisting that the pro rata basis it followed is according to the law. You know, help us understand the position of the government and the law in this situation.
Well, I think my reaction is to clearly situate this whole forth and back within the context of a poorly managed industrial relation. The law is there, the sentiment is there, the morality is there, and above all, the sense of nationhood is clearly missing in all of this. It is good to hear about the findings of what the express provisions of the statutory law say, but it is also important to look at the soul of this nation that ought to be founded and situated in the health of education. Don't forget that all of these crises arose from a breach, if you like, abandonment of the collective bargain that was entered into in 2009. 2009 till now is, you can do the calculation. So, my immediate reaction was that of perturbation, that of sadness. In short, it has become a very sad commentary in the annals of our history that so soon after the breakthrough or the truce, it is now yet another issue relating to the industrial relations in the universities. I mean, I don't know how this will. In any case, I think that both parties should watch it this time because, as it were, the students may be justified in reacting to any further industrial crisis in the institutions of higher learning. I am therefore of the view that the federal government, without necessarily orchestrating another line and a routine procedure of meetings and reconciliation, can take a very quick step to resolve this one. It is that, look, you have all along made it impossible for us to assess our salaries. We proceeded with the only weapon or option that we have, which is industrial strike, until we came to this point. If you are no longer interested in the peace and truth that we have managed to garner, then we will go back to the status quo anthem. And I'm not sure that will augur well for even the government. So I'm calling for maturity this time around. I think that parties, and when I say parties, I'm talking of federal government and the academic staff union, should look at the soul of this country more pointedly and come out of this situation in a way that makes it clear that they are both committed to saving the educational system in this country. But more on the part of the federal government. Want to raise, I mean, we have traveled this route so many times. You could take a futuristic position on this. But with respect to this prolonged 8-month crisis, it cannot be justified in the circumstances that we talk about.
Anyways, legal practitioner Malaki Ugumadu, thank you so much for joining us on the news and for your insights. Moving on, federal lawmakers from the country's Niger Delta region have called for the sacking of the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadiya Umar Farouk. The lawmakers made the call in reaction to alleged neglect of an entire region of the Niger Delta, particularly the Bayelsa state, where the United Nations have declared a disaster zone. They described their action as divisive and punitive, adding that their action shows lack of experience, skills and capacity to handle such a specialized and highly professional ministry. The lawmakers maintain that most oil companies in the region have been forced to declare force majeure due to the impact of the devastation caused by heavy flooding on the facilities which have hampered operations in the region.
The major asset that yields dividends to Nigeria is Nigerian liquefied natural gas Limited declared a force majeure because the facilities that gathers gas for her and sends this gas for processing in Bonny were all submerged. It simply means that even the understanding of the economy and its sustainability in Nigeria has not been appreciated, because somebody has told us that what has happened does not affect the people. Oh, it's not among the first 10, but there was a force majeure declared on an asset that delivers dividends to Nigerians. What an irony.
State resources are, funneled to areas where they are less needed, and people who need them more are allowed to grow. It was a moment of, maybe unintended truth for her to have made that comment. It's not just divisive, it's offensive. We are offended, and the main reason why we're asking her to leave is so that we can find persons who bring into public office more edifying values than this woman.
Why would you, in this kind of important issue, set up a committee, a national committee, without liaising with the states and bringing on board representatives of the state? Because all these locations that we are talking about belong to states. They fall into various states. And so for some of us, this is the beginning of the failure of that same committee that has just been inaugurated. And the only way to resolve this situation is building of dam. Because from the point the Cameroon Dam was established, Nigeria needed to build a 150% bigger dam to be able to curb the excesses. That has not been done till today.
The Executive Secretary of the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities, James Lalu, says the prevalence of some Nigerians who fake living with disabilities in order to get benefits has been a challenge in data gathering for the Commission. This was in response to why data collation was taking lump sum of the budget allotted to the Commission. Further explaining to the Committee on Special Duties during its budget defense, the NCPD boss explained that humanitarians both locally and internationally demand data before intervention is being offered to the Commission. This, he says, will require genuine data, which is cost intensive.
Allocation 300 million, releases 300 million, utilization 298. There's a balance of 1.5 or 1.6 million. What has happened to that balance? Where is it?
There are some projects I think that are of more critical, that should attract, greater attention than data collection, which is ongoing, which means in 2022, some figures were allocated to this particular item. Could you justify why you want to spend 30 million naira to collate, that is to gather data?
A lot of people who do not have disability will rush and go into it and feel it because they are expecting some benefit. So one thing that we must have to do is, when we are collecting data like this, we must get persons with disabilities and send them to the 36 states of the Federation to go there and see and verify the person with disabilities before recording their information and bringing it to us before we give.
The newly elected president of the Christian Association of Nigeria, Daniel Oko, was paid a courtesy visit to the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo in the State House in Abuja on Monday. Speaking to newsmen after the meeting, President of the association explained that the visit is to formally introduce himself and familiarize with the presidency. He assured that the association under his leadership will intensify efforts to ensure unity and peace across all sectors and religion in the country.
I've not had the opportunity to come and present myself to him and to have a conversation with him. So this is just a courtesy visit to let him know that I am now the newly elected president of the Christian Association of Nigeria, and to also, and this is a prelude to the meeting, the courtesy visit to the president. CAN is an ecumenical movement, and we're still working towards Christian unity, and at the same time working towards engaging other sectors of Nigeria for the purpose of building a united and virile country.
Well, we'll take a break here, but still to come, FIRS appoints MTN, Airtel and banks to collect VAT from their suppliers. Details of this story and more right after this break.
Nigerians, elections are here again. Let us shun violence. Let us play the game according to the rules. Do not be a thug. Say no to violence. Let's rise and defeat violence, crime, and sabotage against the peace of our nation. Nigeria is the only country we have. We must do everything to keep it united. We must avoid any act that promotes hate and disintegration. Say no to separatist movement, terrorism, fake news, hate speech, religious bigotry, and any act that tends to divide us as a nation. Watch out for strange gatherings and suspicious movements. Restrict access to sensitive documents and data, the disclosure of which may damage national security. Educate your staff and family, particularly on measures to safeguard information and report security breaches. Apply relevant legal security guidelines to protect yourself and your neighbors neighbors. Due to misinformation and wrong choices, some idle persons resort to vices in their greed to get rich quick. They resort to kidnapping, killings for rituals, and other heinous crimes. Avoid wrong use of the social media. Before you broadcast that false message, think twice. Ask whether it will promote peace or violence. For safety at home, still be security conscious. Educate your household on safety tips. Report all suspicious movements and persons to the security agencies nearest to you. Be a good citizen. Be patriotic. To pass security information, please call 0813-222-2105, 0915-339-1309, 0908-837-3514, or send a mail to dsspr@dss.gov.ng. This message is from the Department of State Services, DSS.
Welcome back. Here is a recap of some of our top stories tonight. Multi-million naira worth of goods and buildings have been destroyed in a fire that gutted the chemical market in Onitsha Head Bridge of Bayelsa State, with many people said to be trapped in the fire. According to reports, the fire started at about 12 p.m. on Tuesday when the chemicals stored in some shops started exploding one after the other. Many people were also said to be injured as the chemicals were exploding and eating people at various points in the market. We also told you that there might be another crisis brewing between the Academic Staff Union of Universities (ASUU) and the federal government, as the union has faulted the government over half salary paid its members for October 2022. The lecturers had accused the federal government of paying them half of 1 month's salary for the month of October. Emmanuel Osodeke, ASUU president, said its members are not casual workers and should not be treated as such. Osodeke described the action of the government as an aberration and a contravention of their rules of engagement. Well, in case you missed any of our news bulletins or for more updates, do log on to our website on www.tv360nigeria.com. You can also follow us on our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Google Plus at TV360 Nigeria, on Facebook at TV360 Online. Ephraim has become among the first in the United Kingdom to be given the green light to sell a new COVID and flu combined test. Derby-based Shaw Screen Diagnostics said it had passed the UK Health Security Agency's coronavirus test device approvals process. The new rapid lateral flow test, which detects both flu and COVID, analyzes a shallow nasal sample which is collected by rotating a swab inside the nostril and then inserting it into a liquid. Derby-based Shaw Screen can now supply the product to settings such as hospitals and care homes across the world. Well, we'll take another break now and return with more stories in business. Welcome back. Mary Kanu is standing by with business updates. Mary, what's the latest in the world of business?
Thank you, Abisola. Hello and welcome to Business News. The Federal Inland Revenue Service has permitted telecom operators as well as money deposit banks in Nigeria to withhold a value-added tax charged on all taxable supplies made to them and remit to the service with effect from January 1st, 2023. This is according to a public notice signed by the Executive Chairman of the FIRS, Mohammed Nami, on Tuesday, November 7, 2022. According to the notice, the companies shall remit the tax withheld or collected in the currency of transaction to the service on or before the 21st day of the month. Immediately following the month, the tax was withheld or collected. And the General Electric and Shell have entered into an agreement to develop potentially low-carbon solutions to reduce the carbon intensity of Shell's liquefied natural gas supply projects worldwide. Under this agreement, GE will accelerate development for the use of 100% hydrogen as a low-carbon fuel for gas turbines, and the focus will be on hydrogen solutions for B&E class gas turbines used in LNG and power generation applications. The agreement will allow them to pursue potential pathways aimed at reducing the carbon intensity of Shell's LNG supply projects around the world. We'll take a break now and return with Stock Market Review. From closing flat to a negative close, Nigeria's equities market closed with bearish sentiment on Tuesday, booking its first negative close this week after a quiet start-off driven by sell-off in the shares of Africa's largest cement maker. Investors booked about 440 billion naira as the market decreased by 1.82% to close at 23.6 trillion naira. As the equities market performance has continued to be largely reflective of investor appetite towards equity, we see Dangote Cement and Guinness PLC top the laggard stable with combined 28 naira loss. Market breadth also closed a negative with 19 losers as against 13 gainers. The market has been a victim of profit taking and sell-off by investors who are rebalancing their portfolios in favor of higher yields in the fixed income market. A look now at some select global stocks. The FTSE, the Dow Jones and the Nikkei are all trading up as investors await the results of the U.S. midterm elections, which could impact future levels of government spending and regulation. That's the stock market review. Abisola, back to you.
Thank you very much, Mary. On the foreign scene, voters in the United States are casting their ballots in key midterm elections, which will determine the makeup of the next Congress and set the tone for the remainder of President Joe Biden's term in the White House. The vote on Tuesday comes as Americans grapple with sky-high inflation and living costs, and the economy has emerged as the top concern among supporters of both the Democratic and Republican parties. Democrats currently retain a slim majority in Congress, and they have focused much of the campaign on defending reproductive rights and strengthening democratic institutions, which they argue are under threat in the country. In sport, English soccer's top flight club Manchester City Football Club has released its annual financial report for the 2021-2022 season, covering the period of the 1st of July 2021 to the 30th of June 2022, announcing the highest ever revenues and profits in the club's history. The Manchester club recorded a club record revenue of 613 million euros with a staggering profit of 41.7 million euros. The club's record revenue makes it the second highest revenue in the Premier League's history, with their fellow Manchester club, Manchester United, recording the highest revenue in 2019, where they posted a revenue of 627 million euros. Well, that's the size of our news bulletin this evening. Many thanks for watching.